Welcome to Tomorrow Unveiled. We are standing at, well, a really critical inflection point. It feels less like just gradual change and more like a seismic shift, doesn't it?
It really does.
This idea we've heard about for so long, an AI-driven future, one with hyper efficiency, maybe even radical abundance,
hmm
it's kind of running headlong into some very real anxieties.
Yeah, and complex structural challenges too, things affecting people right now.
Exactly. You look around and it feels like society is really grappling with the sheer size of this transition.
And that distinction you made is crucial. It's about the concentrated cost versus the diffuse benefit.
Right.
The data our research team compiled just in the last 7 days really confirms this. It's an asymmetrical abundance shock.
Asymmetrical shock. Explain that a bit more.
Well, the costs hit immediately. They're highly concentrated, right?
Yeah.
Hitting specific jobs, specific sectors today.
Yeah.
And that naturally generates a lot of anxiety, huge anxiety.
Makes sense.
But then those big aggregate productivity gains, the ones that are supposed to lower prices eventually, lift everyone's boats across the whole economy.
Yeah.
Those are still, diffuse. They're slow to actually show up in people's lives.
Ah, so it's a perception gap. Like you see AI maybe impacting your neighbor's job this week, but your own grocery bill, your electricity bill, hasn't budged.
Precisely. The shock feels uneven, and that time lag is definitely fueling a lot of the structural fear we're observing in the data.
This gap, this temporal and spatial gap, as you put it, where the pain comes before the gain is widely felt. That's the real hurdle.
That's the central challenge, I think. Future-proofing our systems means figuring out how to manage that gap. It's the core problem.
Okay. And to help us navigate this, our dedicated research team has pulled together, well, a really robust stack of global findings, all corroborated across multiple independent studies.
We're looking for that consensus reality. Yeah.
Focusing on three key areas: work, education, and economics. So let's unpack this. Let's dive into the workforce first, because that seems to be where the friction between the promise and the current reality is sharpest.
Okay, the labor market. When we look at the data, the most striking thing, maybe, is the contradiction. It's this divide between what's happening, on the ground floor in specific companies
Right.
and what the big macro reports are telling us.
So what's the micro level picture?
Well, at the micro level, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Specific companies, you see this across finance, supply chain management, e-commerce operations. They're explicitly linking workforce reductions to efficiency gains.
Efficiency gains from AI.
Directly from their accelerated AI adoption, yes.
And these aren't just like vague future plans.
No, we're talking C-suite announcements, detailing actual current rounds of job cuts,
Oh,
often in those back office operational units.
why there specifically?
Because leaders are aiming for, quote, greater speed and agility, right?
Yeah.
Powered by these newly integrated AI systems, the language is very clear.
The tech is taking over tasks.
Routine, repeatable, cognitive tasks. And that's leading directly to reduced headcount, even in places you might not expect, like human resources.
HR. How so?
AI efficiency tools are now handling candidate screening, administrative scheduling,
Yeah.
tasks that used to take up a lot of HR staff time.
Okay, so that micro level pain is very real, very documented.
Undeniable.
Yeah.
Yet. And this is the paradox. When you zoom out, the macro picture looks almost, unnervingly calm.
Oh.
Our research team flagged major labor market analyses. There was one recent study tracking U.S. employment data right from when generative AI really took off.
And what did it find?
At the aggregate level, no discernible disruption. That was the conclusion.
Wow. Really? No disruption.
The analysis basically said the current rate of job shifts is gradual. It's consistent with historical patterns we saw during, say, the internet boom in the late 90s or when industrial robotics became widespread.
That contradiction is, it's fascinating, isn't it? You've got this widespread fear driven by very real, high-profile company actions. But juxtaposed against this steady macro-level picture where, the overall unemployment rate isn't spiking.
It means the disruption isn't uniform. It's highly targeted.
Okay, so who is it targeting? Who's absorbing the bulk of this initial shock? Who's the canary in the coal mine right now?
The data points pretty clearly to two main groups. First, younger workers, and second, those in mid-level jobs involving routine cognitive tasks.
Let's break that down. Younger workers first.
We're seeing concentrated employment declines among younger workers, specifically those aged, say, 22 to 25.
Just starting out.
Exactly. And in roles that are highly exposed to AI, Things like entry-level software development, customer service, a lot of clerical work.
Right, that's the entry-level crisis we started hearing about. It's like AI is blocking the path onto that first rung of the corporate ladder.
It can certainly feel that way. These are the roles where young professionals would typically do those initial, maybe repetitive tasks that actually teach them the business from the ground up.
But couldn't you argue that's just temporary? I mean, these are young, digitally native workers. Surely they can reskill faster than older generations. Maybe it's just a short-term blip?
That's a really key question. But the findings, they suggest this might be more structural, not just temporary,
Structural how?
because it's not just about simple data entry anymore. It points to this broader trend, what some are calling the white-collar hollowing out.
Hollowing out.
Yeah. The research looked at occupations involving routine, repeatable cognitive tasks. Think office and administrative support, many parts of business and financial operations.
Sure.
The finding was that over 68% of the tasks within those occupations are potentially automatable by current AI models.
Over 2/3. That's huge.
It is, and it fundamentally challenges that old assumption, the one that said only low-skill manufacturing or maybe some service labor was really at risk.
Right. The robots were coming for the factory jobs first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now, basic programming, accounting reconciliation work, paralegal research, even technical writing. These are now considered at high risk of displacement because they involve predictable, repeatable intellectual inputs that AI is getting very good at.
So if you combine that displacement of mid-level tasks with what happens at the lower end, is it stable there?
It seems to be more about augmentation there, which we'll get to, but
Yep.
this hollowing out in the middle, combined with changes at both ends, it gives the labor market a very distinct shape.
Ah, the barbell effect we mentioned earlier.
Precisely.
Okay, so tell us how that barbell is shaping up. What's happening at the two ends, and where's the value actually being created now?
Well, the barbell shape is quite dramatic in the data. On the high end, the market is absolutely surging for uniquely human skills.
Things AI struggles with.
Exactly. High-stakes critical thinking, complex client advisory roles, empathetic negotiation, long-term strategic planning, and this has led to the rapid emergence of completely new specialized roles. Things like AI design strategist or, prompt engineer.
And the people who can do this stuff.
Critically, workers who already have proven AI fluency, they're commanding just staggering wage
How
premiums.
staggering are we talking? Give us a number.
Our data confirms a verified, get this, 56% wage premium
56%.
over their peers in the exact same occupation who lack those advanced AI skills.
Wow. Has that changed recently?
Dramatically. It was only around 25% just a year ago.
So that premium has more than doubled in a year.
Yeah. That 56% premium reflects the sheer scarcity of talent. People who can not just use the AI tools, but can ethically integrate them into high-value workflows, who can manage AI model risk, who can audit the outputs effectively.
A 56% premium. I mean, that's a ridiculously powerful financial signal, isn't it? It tells you exactly where the market thinks the value is going if you can get those skills anyway.
Absolutely. It's a huge incentive for upskilling if you have the resources and, crucially, the foundational digital literacy to even start that journey.
Okay, so that's the high end of the barbell. What about the other end, the lower wage, maybe more manual or service-oriented jobs? Is it just pure replacement happening there?
Surprisingly, no, not primarily. In sectors like logistics, manufacturing, frontline customer service, the focus seems to be much more on augmentation and stabilization.
Augmentation? How?
Well, the primary goal seems to be solving chronic human problems in those sectors. Things like really high turnover, unpredictable schedules, inefficient processes that lead to burnout.
So AI is being used to fix workforce issues, not just replace workers.
In many cases, yes. For example, we see companies deploying intelligent, multilingual AI recruiters. These can screen candidates 24/7, cutting the time to hire from weeks down to just days.
Okay, that helps with turnover.
Right. And they're also using algorithmic scheduling systems. The aim is to give workers more stable, predictable hours, which, for many frontline workers, is a massive quality of life improvement.
That's a fascinating dynamic. So the AI might take the job of the middle manager HR scheduler,
Potentially, yes.
but it makes the delivery driver's schedule more humane and predictable, that asymmetry again.
It's everywhere you look in this transition. The aim seems to be augmenting and stabilizing that frontline worker, making those highly manual or service roles more efficient, more retainable, even as the routine cognitive tasks get automated elsewhere.
But, as we shift towards valuing these high-end, uniquely human skills, we also seem to be opening up completely new kinds of vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
especially where the human form itself meets digital replication.
Yes, that's a major ethical risk emerging.
The concentration of power over digital assets, digital likenesses. We saw a particularly, frankly, disturbing case study pop up in the creative sector.
This is a really significant issue, especially in film and media industries. The sources our team analyzed documented the increasing use of AI body scans.
Body scans of performers.
Yes. Capturing a performer's digital likeness, right down to their specific gait, their facial expressions, their full body geometry.
Okay. And then what happens with that scan?
That likeness, once it's captured, can potentially be used, well, in perpetuity. Across different scenes, maybe different productions entirely, or even in advertising down the line.
Without new consent.
That's the core problem.
Yeah.
It effectively displaces the original performer from future work opportunities without clear usage rights, or often fresh consent for each use.
Wow. I mean, that goes way beyond just losing out on one specific gig, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It raises these profound questions about digital ownership, about identity itself. If a performer gets scanned once, and their digital twin can then work, say, 20 years of background roles in movies.
They lose all the potential residual income from those future roles.
It's the potential loss of control over your own digital self, your appearance, and your entire future earning potential tied to that appearance.
Exactly. The economic damage is clear, lost residuals, lost work, but the identity crisis it imposes. Imagine seeing your digital self being used in ways you never agreed to, maybe didn't even know about. It's potentially devastating.
So what's the answer?
It highlights an urgent, immediate need for new consent frameworks. We need clear regulations to safeguard worker data rights and their digital likeness.
Treating the digital twin like an extension of the person.
Precisely. Organizations are mobilizing rapidly now to push for rules that hold platforms and production companies financially and legally responsible for the ethical use of these digital assets. And that urgent need for new skills, both the really specialized AI fluency we talked about and those uniquely human ones like empathy, critical thinking, that brings us directly to the education system, doesn't it?
It has to, yeah.
Our research team found a globally corroborated consensus on this. Integrating comprehensive AI literacy into education isn't just, a Western priority. It's universal. Top-level stuff across Asia, Europe, the Americas, everywhere.
And looking at the U.S. approach to meet that urgency, it seems to be leaning heavily on strategic corporate partnerships, which is, I guess, common for the U.S., but the scale seems different this time.
The scale's unprecedented, definitely. You've got the nation's two largest teachers' unions, the AFT and the NEA, forging these large-scale strategic partnerships with big tech players, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic. The big names are all involved.
And this means money flowing in.
Millions of dollars in corporate funding, yes. The goal is to train hundreds of thousands of educators.
Train them to do what with AI?
The focus is on using AI for things like personalized lesson plans, streamlining administrative tasks, using data-driven insights for student assessment, practical applications in the classroom.
That infusion of resources sounds necessary, frankly, given the state of many public education budgets. But you mentioned unions. There's a crucial caveat they're fighting for, isn't there? Something about control.
Yes, and it's really important. The unions are fighting very hard to retain full ownership of the intellectual property, the IP, of any curriculum that comes out of these partnerships. Okay? And they want strict control over the ethical guidelines and the pedagogical approaches used. It's fundamentally about who shapes the narrative.
Preventing corporate influence over what's taught.
Exactly. It's a strategic move to make sure that independent educators, not tech companies, potentially looking for future market share or pushing their own tools, are the ones guiding how AI is taught and used in classrooms. It's about guiding the education of the next generation responsibly.
Okay, so that's the U.S. model, big partnerships, big funding, but also this tension over control. Now, if we look across the Pacific, specifically at what our research team flagged as the Asian model, it seems like a very different approach.
Quite different, yes.
Oh.
Especially in terms of speed and scale.
Right.
And it's driven less by partnerships and more by direct national mandates.
It's centralized control.
The urgency feels very palpable and centralized there. Take India, for example. They have an enormously ambitious plan.
What are they doing?
They're planning to integrate AI into the national school curriculum starting from Class 3.
Class 3. How old is that?
That's for children around 8 years old.
Wow, starting really young.
And it begins in the 2026-2027 academic year. Critically, this isn't some small pilot program. It's a mandatory nationwide move. The aim is to future-proof a massive student body, potentially covering 100 million students within just a few years.
That scale is just staggering. Designing a system intended to produce an entire generation of AI-fluent workers practically from childhood.
And China. They've taken an even more aggressive, even earlier approach.
How so?
They've already integrated AI as a compulsory subject for both primary and secondary students. They're teaching robotics, basic machine learning concepts, algorithmic thinking, to children as young as 6.
6 years old.
Yes. These centralized national mandates really highlight a deep commitment. It's about embedding fundamental AI literacy as a core early-stage economic strategy. It's seen as vital for future global competitiveness.
Okay, so whether it's partnerships or mandates, there's this huge push globally to get AI into schools. And you'd think this would be a massive potential benefit for teachers, right? Finally freeing them up from some of the drudgery, grading papers, admin tasks, allowing them to focus more on mentoring, on the human side of teaching.
That's the logical assumption, absolutely.
Our research identified a real aha moment for learners here, didn't it? Regarding teacher workload, using Singapore as a powerful case study.
Yes, Singapore provides a fascinating paradox for that promise of automation freeing up time. They have one of the highest teacher AI adoption rates globally. Something like 75% of their educators are actively using AI tools in their daily work.
75%, that's incredibly high.
It is. So the natural expectation, as you said, is that this would lead to a massive reduction in their working hours. Finally, some breathing room for teachers. But the data confirms their average working hours have not decreased. In fact, they slightly increased.
Wait, hang on. They're using AI tools more than almost anywhere else, but they're working more. Why? If AI is automating lesson planning and parent communication drafts and whatnot, where's all that saved time going?
It seems the time saved is being reallocated in two really crucial ways.
Yeah.
And these reallocations effectively redefine the entire job description of a teacher in the AI age.
Okay, what's the first reallocation?
The first is exactly what you'd hope for, channeling that saved time into high-value, uniquely human work, providing more personalized student support, more socio-emotional coaching, giving deep, customized feedback to individual students, the kind of tasks that require profound human empathy and connection.
Right, the stuff AI can't do well. That makes sense. So what's the second reallocation? Why the overall increase in hours?
The second reallocation is something teachers there are actually calling the verification tax.
The verification tax. Tell us more about that. That sounds ominous.
Well, it reflects a practical reality. Because AI tools, especially the generative models, are still prone to hallucination, generating plausible sounding but factually incorrect information.
Right, making stuff up confidently.
Exactly. So teachers have to spend substantial time meticulously checking, validating, and cross-referencing anything the AI generates.
Like what?
Like checking for factual accuracy, for cultural relevance, making sure it aligns properly with the mandated curriculum standards. For instance, if an AI generates a suggested reading list for a history class, the teacher has to check every source, every summary for bias or inaccuracy.
Or if it writes a practice quiz.
The teacher has to verify every single question and answer, and also consider the potential bias inherent in how the prompt was structured in the first place.
So the AI isn't really reducing the total amount of work.
It seems not.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally redefining the job of the teacher, shifting them away from being purely a content deliverer towards being more of a personalized mentor, an ethical validator of information, and essentially a content auditor for AI outputs.
A whole new skill set required, on top of everything else.
A very different role, yes. And this redefinition of work, this shift in skills, it ultimately cascades right into our entire economic structure, doesn't it?
It has to.
AI promises these massive macroeconomic benefits. You see long-term GDP growth projections, some up to 3.7% annually by 2075, attributed to AI. Huge numbers.
Yeah, the potential seems enormous on paper.
Yet right now, today, at the macro level, measurable productivity gains remain surprisingly modest.
Why the disconnect between that huge hype, that potential, and the hard economic numbers we're seeing now? If workers are using AI tools and reporting saving hours every day, shouldn't we see that reflected in overall output almost immediately?
Well, that points to a fundamental measurement gap. It's actually something we've seen historically with other big disruptive technologies.
How does the gap work here?
Workers might report substantial time savings from using AI tools, sure. But, and this is the key, if that saved time is used simply to ease up a bit, Maybe manage their existing workload more comfortably, or perhaps spend more time in meetings discussing the AI.
Then the employer doesn't see it as increased output.
Exactly. The aggregate gain doesn't register as more widgets produced or more reports filed, not immediately anyway. The general expectation is that firm management will soon start to expect more output once they fully recalibrate what AI-augmented employees are capable of.
Right. The pressure will ramp up eventually.
Probably. So for now, the visible economic impact seems to be driven much more by the unprecedented corporate investment in AI infrastructure. You know, billions being spent on advanced chips and data centers, and the resulting stock market rally around AI companies.
Rather than a fundamental boost in average worker productivity across the board.
Precisely. Not yet, anyway.
Okay, so the economic benefit for now is concentrating at that capital and investment level. The people building the shovels for the gold rush are doing well,
That's a good way to put it.
rather than the money flowing it to the average employee's paycheck. And this brings us right to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? The inequality paradox. Our sources detailed two really complex and kind of competing economic forecasts about how AI is going to affect wealth distribution.
Indeed. It's a critical area. One view, which maybe we can call the moderately optimistic perspective, is the wage compression view.
Wage compression, meaning wages get closer together.
Potentially. This theory suggests that since generative AI is uniquely capable of automating tasks previously done by highly paid, often degree-holding white-collar workers, think programmers, financial analysts, consultants.
The jobs affected by the hollowing out we discussed.
Exactly those. The idea is AI could compress the wage scale from the top down. By driving down the cost, or the premium, for that highly skilled labor, it could potentially reduce income inequality.
How would that work?
If the highest salaries drop faster than middle or lower salaries, then the overall gap in income, what people earn year to year, could actually shrink. That's measured by things like the Gini index.
Okay, that sounds, well, somewhat positive on the surface. A more level playing field for daily or yearly earnings, maybe. But there's another forecast, isn't there? The wealth concentration view. And our research suggests that this might be the more realistic one.
It's certainly the more alarming forecast, yes. It suggests that even if income inequality were to fall slightly, which is still a big if, overall wealth inequality is poised to absolutely skyrocket.
Skyrocket. Even if incomes get closer. How?
This is what some economists are calling the great decoupling, the decoupling of capital and labor value.
Okay.
The reason is structural. Those high-income workers whose wages might be suppressed by AI, they are also the individuals who disproportionately own capital.
Stocks, company shares, investment properties.
Exactly. They own the assets. So as AI drives massive corporate profits, boosting the returns on capital wealth concentration just accelerates dramatically. Even if their salary stagnates or falls, their wealth grows much faster because they own the appreciating assets.
Leading to a drastically more unequal society in terms of overall net worth.
That's the fear. The exponential economic benefits generated by AI get captured primarily by the owners of capital, not by labor, even skilled labor.
The implications of that, of generating all this abundance but without distributing it equitably, they're profound. You could have a society producing vastly more goods and services, technically richer overall.
But the ownership of that productivity, the wealth generated, is concentrated among a very, very small percentage of capital owners.
A deeply divided society. But hang on, is this abundance even infinitely scalable? Is the digital growth friction-free? Because our research team flagged some real, tangible infrastructural frictions that seem to challenge that whole myth.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point often missed in the hype. One of the biggest, most immediate challenges to the infinite scalability myth is simply energy.
Energy for AI.
Energy is emerging as the new immediate bottleneck. The surging power requirements for these massive AI data centers are immense.
All immense.
They're straining electrical grids and physical infrastructure across the globe. We're seeing credible reports of new data center power loads being equivalent to the needs of entire major cities.
Wow. Really?
And growing at rates maybe 20 times faster than prior levels in some regions. This means our high-tech digital AI future is directly and immediately tied to massive utility overhauls, the need for potentially building new power plants.
And serious climate concerns, presumably.
Huge climate concerns, yes.
And how does this connect back to the average person, to you listening?
Well, it connects directly to household economics. Increased demand puts a huge strain on utility providers. That inevitably raises costs. And ultimately, that can hit your household utility bill, especially for lower-income households who spend a larger portion of their budget on energy.
So the energy required just to fuel the AI introduces this very real physical friction.
It fundamentally contradicts the narrative of pure, friction-free, infinite digital abundance. There are hard physical limits.
That's such a crucial link. The promise of this ethereal digital future is constrained by the very analog, very real-world realities of energy infrastructure and cost. We love hearing your thoughts on this complex topic. Whether you're listening on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, please leave a comment and let us know what you think about AI's impact on wealth and income. Do you lean towards the wage compression view, or are you more concerned about runaway wealth concentration? Let us know. Okay, so given the sheer velocity of this transformation and these clear signs of targeted displacement, the inequality risks, the energy constraints, policy is basically racing to catch up, right?
Racing is the right word. Yeah.
Let's look at the critical governance gaps that are maybe finally starting to be filled, particularly around algorithmic fairness. That seems key.
Before we dive into specific regulations, maybe it's worth defining quickly what we're actually trying to protect people from. We're talking about automated decision systems, or ADS.
Right, the algorithms making big decisions.
Essentially, yes. Algorithms that make consequential decisions about hiring, firing, maybe loan applications, resource allocation, often without direct human intervention at the point of decision. Governments are now realizing they need to establish firm guardrails around these systems.
Because they can perpetuate bias.
Perpetuate or even amplify existing societal biases, yes, and often in ways that are hard to see or challenge.
So where are we seeing progress on these guardrails? Our research flagged California as a key example.
Yes, California has introduced some really significant regulations set to take effect October 1st. They explicitly prohibit employers from using ADS in ways that discriminate based on protected characteristics, race, gender, age, etc.
That sounds like standard anti-discrimination law, though. What's new for AI?
What's crucial is the requirement for human review for all truly consequential decisions. So an AI might suggest someone for a layoff based on its metrics.
But a human has to sign off.
A human must ultimately review the recommendation, make the final call, and take responsibility for that decision. The AI can't be the final arbiter for firing someone, for example.
That's a big deal.
It is. And furthermore, the regulation holds the third-party vendors who create and sell these ADS systems liable for bias found within them, even if the bias was unintentional.
So the tech companies can be held responsible too, not just the employer using the tool.
Exactly. This whole package is quickly becoming an emerging standard for algorithmic fairness, certainly within the U.S. It sets a really important legal precedent. Algorithms are not neutral. They're tools built by humans, reflecting human data and choices, and they must be audited and held accountable.
That acknowledgement that an algorithm can discriminate just as effectively, maybe even more subtly than a human, feels critical. Now, thinking globally, how are policy efforts addressing the increasing precarity of work? Especially as more jobs become sort of gig-based, managed entirely by an algorithm.
Yeah, the growth of platform work, gig work,
Yeah.
often managed entirely by algorithms. It's a huge area, and we are seeing comprehensive legislation emerge, particularly abroad. Malaysia, for instance, was highlighted in our research for its comprehensive gig workers bill.
What does that bill do?
It's establishing systemic protections, things like requiring the platforms, the Ubers, the food delivery apps, etc., to contribute to income protection funds for their workers.
Like unemployment insurance for gig workers?
Sort of, yes. And establishing accident compensation systems. Crucially, it also clearly defines the platform operator's responsibility for worker safety and for setting up fair dispute resolution processes.
Those specifics, mandated insurance contributions, clear ways to handle disputes sound vital. It's about making sure workers in this increasingly automated economy still have some kind of basic safety net, right?
Yeah.
Even if their day-to-day work is managed by a faceless platform algorithm.
Exactly. These protections become absolutely crucial as more labor potentially becomes precarious and where the management relationship is with the AI platform itself. It shifts some liability away from the individual worker and back onto the massive, often highly profitable platform operators.
Okay, so policy is moving, albeit maybe slowly. Now, we've all heard the constant refrain from CEOs, from industry leaders about the need for upskilling and reskilling, preparing the workforce for these new AI-augmented roles.
It's universal rhetoric, yes.
But our research seemed to confirm a pretty significant gap between that corporate talk and the reality on the ground, something you called the reskilling trap.
Yes, the research corroborates this. Well, unsettling reality. despite the widespread stated commitment to upskilling their existing workforce.
What are companies actually doing?
Many organizations, when push comes to shove, seem to be opting for what appears to be the faster, cheaper, and arguably easier strategy. Replace over reskill,
Replace over reskill.
meaning they hire new AI-fluent talent, maybe straight out of university, maybe poaching from competitors, while simultaneously laying off existing long-term employees whose current skills are becoming obsolete due to automation.
Ouch. That preference for replacement, that leads directly to this reskilling trap you mentioned.
Does.
And what does that trap look like? Who falls into it?
It primarily affects the workers who arguably need the training the most, often those with the lowest foundational digital skills to begin with. Our data suggests that could be nearly one-third of the workforce in some specific industrial areas.
A third lack basic digital skills.
Foundational digital literacy, yes.
Yeah.
And these are precisely the workers who are least likely to receive the limited corporate reskilling investments that are available. Because, frankly, they often lack that basic digital foundation needed to absorb complex AI training quickly.
Oh.
And from a purely cold business perspective, companies may view training them as a slower, riskier investment compared to just hiring someone already skilled.
That's worrying. So if the private sector isn't stepping up sufficiently to train the existing workforce, especially the most vulnerable,
Then the burden falls squarely back onto government, onto the public sector, and the social safety net to try and prevent massive social dislocation.
and is government recognizing this need for public intervention? What's happening there?
Well, the U.S. administration seems to be acknowledging it. They're establishing things like an AI workforce research hub. They're prioritizing federal investment in workforce adaptation programs.
What does that mean in practice?
It means clarifying guidance for states on how to rapidly identify and support workers who have been specifically dislocated by AI. It's about trying to modernize the unemployment and retraining systems, which were really built for a 20th century economy of, say, factory closures, not for rapid technological displacement across white-collar roles.
Okay. Now, this threat of inevitable widespread displacement, it has naturally brought the universal basic income debate roaring back, hasn't it?
It certainly has.
UBI's even getting endorsements from some major tech leaders, which is interesting.
Yes, UBI, the idea of a fixed regular payment to all citizens, regardless of their employment status or need, has definitely resurfaced as a potential solution or part of the solution to widespread AI displacement.
But is it enough?
Well, the sources our team reviewed raise serious questions about whether UBI alone can really counteract the kind of complex structural disruption we're potentially facing, especially since, as we've discussed, high-skilled white-collar jobs are also clearly at risk this time.
So just giving people cash might not fix the underlying problem.
It might not address the fundamental wealth inequality problem, the one driven by that concentration of capital ownership that AI seems poised to accelerate. Cash helps people survive, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily give them a stake in the new economy.
Which brings us to this more maybe radical alternative idea that seems to be gaining traction in the research, universal basic capital. We should probably clearly contrast that with UBI.
Yes, Universal Basic Capital, UBC, is a fundamentally different, much more structural approach. Instead of just giving citizens income, i.e. cash,
UBC proposes giving them what?
income-producing assets, capital itself.
How would that even work? Where would these assets come from?
Well, there are various proposed mechanisms. It could be generated through national investment funds, perhaps sovereign wealth funds funded partly by taxing the profits of automation, or maybe revenue from leasing public data for AI training.
Or even direct ownership stakes.
Or even potentially direct fractional ownership stakes given to citizens in the newly automated industries themselves. The core idea is taxing the automation dividend and distributing the returns, the capital growth, the profits back to the public.
So UBC isn't just a safety net like UBI might be. It's trying to be an active mechanism to redistribute the actual ownership of the new productivity that AI creates.
Exactly. It directly attempts to counteract that great decoupling of labor and capital we talked about. It tries to ensure that AI's massive productivity gains benefit society broadly through shared ownership rather than just concentrating wealth solely among the existing capital owners.
And what's the consensus among the economists your team looked at, UBI versus UBC?
The emerging consensus seems to be that traditional solutions just tweaking unemployment insurance, maybe even simple UBI, are likely inadequate on their own for the sheer scale and nature of the coming structural change. More fundamental shifts, like exploring UBC or radical skills-first economic restructuring, might be necessary.
If you're finding this insightful and maybe a little mind-bending, please take a moment to like this video if you're on YouTube, subscribe to Tomorrow Unveiled, and maybe consider hitting that new hype button to help us reach more viewers. And of course, do turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the future we're exploring. #outro, steering toward a managed transition.
So, if we try to synthesize the whole landscape that our dedicated research team uncovered this week, it feels like we saw three core movements really converging, don't you think?
Yeah, let's recap them.
First, this highly targeted but still profound transformation happening in the white-collar workforce, driving that barbell effect we discussed.
Right, second.
Second, this global, incredibly urgent race for AI literacy, embedding it right into childhood education across different models. And third, that looming economic reality of the inequality paradox, the potential for both wage compression and runaway wealth concentration, fundamentally tied to who owns the capital.
It definitely feels like the technology has set a powerful trajectory, but human choices, the policies we enact, the investments we make or don't make, that will ultimately determine the destination. And speaking of choices, if you're listening to Tomorrow Unveiled on a podcast service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could choose to leave us a rating and review. It really does help us reach new listeners trying to make sense of these changes.
Ultimately, the evidence our team gathered suggests two potential long-term scenarios seem most plausible, based on current trends.
Okay, what are they?
Well, the first is Scenario A, the managed transition. This path is intentional. It requires massive, coordinated investment in education, rethinking the job of the teacher, like we saw in Singapore. It needs modernized social safety nets, probably incorporating concepts like universal basic capital. And it needs a real corporate commitment to augmenting workers over just replacing them to ensure the productivity gains are actually shared.
That sounds like hard work. What's the alternative?
The alternative, the path of least resistance perhaps, is Scenario B, the deepening divide.
Does it sound good?
It's characterized by policy inertia, basically, failing to act decisively, by unchecked wealth concentration, accelerating that great decoupling, by a failure to close the growing skills gap for those left behind. And the inevitable result of that path is rising social tension, greater economic precarity for millions, and deepening political polarization.
Two very different futures.
The transformation driven by AI feels inevitable at this point. The technology isn't going back in the box. But human agency, the policy choices, the corporate decisions, the educational priorities we set in the next, say, 12 to 36 months, that agency will determine which of those two futures actually materializes.
Based on the corroborated findings your team analyzed, which path does it feel like we're currently on right now?
Honestly, the weight of the evidence, particularly the slowness of policy to really grapple with the reskilling trap and the sheer speed of capital investment concentrating wealth, it suggests the world is currently sliding, maybe passively, towards the deepening divide scenario.
That's sobering.
It is. AI is arguably the most powerful tool humanity has ever created. The critical question for you, for everyone listening, to consider is this. When the immense benefits of this power do finally materialize at the macro level, who will actually wield that power and for whose ultimate benefit?
A profound and vital question indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the future of work, education, and society on Tomorrow Unveiled. We'll see you next time.